Hello and welcome to a brand new show of IRM, a show on which we debate, deliberate, discuss and ideate what can really bring India back on the track. The pandemic crisis is far from over. Parts of economy are finding it difficult to survive. Parts of the economy have revived and some parts of the economy actually have converted this crisis into an opportunity and they are flourishing. But one sector which normally we don't pay too much of attention to is the social sector. How has the social sector evolved in this pandemic? What about food? What about agriculture? And if innovation and disruption are changing the way how we are going to be consuming and we would be living, what about innovation in the social and the food sector? Think about it. When was the last time we spoke about innovation in the food sector, where a lot of innovation is happening? And my guest on the show today is someone who's leading both social innovation and also food innovation. It gives me great pleasure to bring on board Mr. Manoj Kumar, CEO of Naandi Foundation and co-founder of Araku Coffee. Yeah, the zing of Araku Coffee. We'll talk about it during the course of how Araku Coffee, how the idea of Araku Coffee was born. Mr. Kumar, welcome to ET Now. It's your first time I'm interacting with you, so a very warm welcome to you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I grew up reading Economic Times, so all the failings that I have in this interview are blamed on
me. Thank you very much. Historians have divided the world in two parts, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. What is your understanding of the Indian economy is? Like my introduction said, there are parts of the economy which have revived, there are parts of the economy which are flourishing, but there are also parts of the economy which are finding it difficult to survive. The area which you represent, food, social agriculture, what has been the impact of pandemic there?
So, history and historians remarking this to be post-pandemic and pre-pandemic or post-COVID and pre-COVID, we will soon see whether we have passed our judgment a little too early, because I don't want to sound like a doom's prophet, but to say that we might see many more such. So we may want to name COVID 1.0, COVID 2.0, because I would say this is the world of microbes. Welcome to their world. And they're going to talk to us a little more seriously than ever. This pandemic has allowed all of us, especially Indians and entrepreneurs, to do what is the most talked about word these days. And the word is not disruption, it's not innovation. For me, it is reset. This is a chance to reset. I won't exactly say reboot, but it is to reset. And in this reset, we will find that food and agriculture has a great role to play. And I will eliminate agriculture for a moment and merge it under food banner, because it's a good chance for all of us to, invoke the American activist, writer, poet, Wendell Berry, who said, eating is an agricultural act. So it's important to go a little beyond sensorial pleasure of eating and think about eating to be something that was produced by farmer, and there was so much of economics and politics before the food came to our plate. So I'll re-emphasize the fact that the study and the economics and politics of food will be something that is both an opportunity and challenge for India. And in the same way will be the study of what I call soil sciences and microbiology. These are three areas which you will find have the intersection of science, humanities happen, and which should be taken seriously, because India has an opportunity to lead in this front. That's my long comment to your provocation about historical divisions going forward.
Right. Mr. Kumar, every country in this pandemic area is trying to become in a sense independence when it comes to food security. US is desperately trying it. European nations are desperately trying it. India has a huge potential to become a food exporter now. But frankly, barring some categories of paddy, little bit of rice, spices from Kerala and down south, few pockets of mangoes, that's it. For a country which has land, which has agriculture bent, why is that on a global food map we have not managed to have a real footprint?
Well, I think this is probably the most relevant economic question we should ask as a nation. And I'm glad you raised this. I think, first of all, we have had a label of a nation struggling to get food grain sufficiency done. I mean, starting from post-independence, the Green Revolution itself had positioned us to be a consumer nation which is not producing enough food grains. The reality is far from that. If you look at the 1950s, President's Award-winning farmers per acre yield on any of the vegetable, it still is higher than whatever we have done with all the high-yielding varieties research done. I'll send you some data and visuals of farmers being awarded in the past as evidence to tell you that the current farmers are struggling to meet 1950 farmers' yield. So the myth that was because of lack of efficient distribution, because of lack of efficient way of processing our food grains production, etc., had resulted in a skewed sort of availability of food, resulting in an assumption that we need to import food. I think that was a myth. Having referred to that historical error as a touch point, I like to invite our listeners to this point that India is positioned now with an extraordinary endowment of few things which could make us become the food basket of the world. And I would say this with a certain authority, which comes from listening to people, studying this space, and also producing food around the country on behalf of Naandi and Araku Coffee. So one, we have the most extraordinary blessing comparable with Africa, parts of Africa, not entire, in terms of sunshine, in terms of rainfall, and in terms of diversity in topography. You take the Indian subcontinent, ranging from the kind of coastal belt we have to the hilly, to the different terroirs we have, we can produce almost everything that the planet needs. The daily foods to superfoods to nutrition-dense foods, we can have everything. But we haven't really exploited that opportunity. So one is to relook at how do we create agricultural entrepreneurs from just farm laborer turned farmers. That transition we have to make, number one. And we need to have an ecosystem created to make youngsters take up farming as a farm entrepreneurship career, which can generate value. This is one. Number two, as part of that itself, but also as an independent thing, India needs to seriously look at our policies on what I call is the germplasm. In a provocative way, I'll say, I'm fine with all of us having to be forced to speak one language, but definitely not one variety of food. That just doesn't do well for the planet. So I think it is important that we play on these aspects and develop agriculture as the next sunrise sector, food as the next sunrise. We did this in the 90s with IT. We did it with financial sector after that. Now it's time to do with food and agriculture.
But can that be done, Mr. Kumar? Because you're absolutely right that this is a country which has seen Operation the Green Revolution, and Amul has got created. It is a cooperative driven organization, and it is one of the most finest organizations in the world. But to transform agriculture or food has state issues, has trust issues, has transmission issues. Even if you try and adopt digital technology, you roll out different projects, it's something which is not going to be easy. It is going to be a Herculean task given a size, reach, geography and fragmentation.
So I'll only counter by saying who was willing to wager in the 70s and 80s that India will be known for IT? Who would have thought that, most of the Silicon Valley companies will be run by Indians? Who would have thought Bangalore would create a different set of millionaires and billionaires? It happened because you created the ecosystem for entrepreneurs to flourish. The point I'm making is we need to step aside from our obsession, which is driven by the politics of vote, to just keep pandering to farmers and keep them subsistence. We need to shift that, and our policy should be focused on creating entrepreneurship and businesses around food and agriculture. Once that shift happens, you will see that it will flourish. Let's look at IT for a moment, and it's important we see that. Almost every big name you say, I'm sorry to highlight this without meaning any controversies, all got large tracts of land almost free to set up their campuses. There were tax holidays given. It was an incentive to create export income for us because our balance of payments and our dollars were, in bad shape. It created employment. So there was a thrust and a policy. We can do the same, and we can export processed food. We grow so much food which rest of the West cannot produce because of climatic disadvantages. Why don't we do that? We can do almost every fruit and vegetable to be converted into processed, nutrient-dense food from India. Instead, we have a situation that almost all food from India is banned because of high pesticide and pesticide residues. So if we can create food entrepreneurs, if we can create investment in food sector to be attractive, if we can create tax holidays, if we can create organic hubs in the country, if we can give incentives wherever these things happen, 5-year tax holiday, export tax holiday, you will find a boom. This country is having 600 million people below the age 25. Let's ask them all to start not another app, for heaven's sake. Let them all go and start a company which produces food and sells food, processes it. Let them have the value chain to do that. Our dealing with food is exactly the way we deal with rainwater. Almost entire rainwater in the country comes for a month, and then we have floods, and after that we discuss drought. We've never managed how to contain the water and redistribute it. Same with our food. We are a monsoon economy. We need to know how to convert it into processed value, export it, and generate income for all of us, and learn to reinvest in it. So there has to be an entrepreneurial, fiscal incentive driven food agriculture ecosystem to be created. What we are doing in Delhi and Bangalore are hopefully going to catch policymakers' attention. We are creating food clusters based on just growing vegetable organically in hubs of 250 acres, which is very much mirroring and inspired from the IT parks, which became the SEZs. Same way we are doing in the cities. Hopefully that becomes a national policy, but we had to start somewhere, and it's done as a for-profit by us. A bunch of youngsters I have got who have become the sort of co-entrepreneurs to drive this for us. And people like Mr. Mahindra and Chris Gopalakrishnan and Satish Reddy are angel investors. But we need 1,000 of these to happen.
Let's now shift focus to the APMC reforms. Are they truly transformational in nature? Because what this does is that you can transfer food from one state to another, which means if the two neighboring states, one has surplus and one has shortage, the price realization for the farmer goes higher, and the so-called adatia in the middle diminishes. Is this effective, or it's going to be a tough one to implement?
No. So I think we need to understand that for the last 30 years, everyone worth his salt argued for abolition of APMC. And now that it has been abolished, obviously 50% of the country has to oppose it. So the economics is lost in the political hegemony that we are finding, and thereby the whole issue is itself getting diffused from focus. What is important to understand is the idea of APMC, and I'll I'll take the risk of explaining it a bit politically and economically because it's important to see both. So the idea of APMC, what it did is in a region specific, village or cluster or district, there was the committee that was created and was powerful enough to decide that you have to buy everything through that. Now that created political powers in that region, which could not be sort of superseded by any national or federal or outside state powers. By abolishing APMC, you just removed that power. So obviously there is unrest when anybody is disempowered. That's one part of the political story which we need to understand. Let's talk a moment for the farmer before I go to the consumer. As far as the farmer is concerned, theoretically, the farmer can move his food to anyone. Now, this is like telling me a farmer can get money from World Bank also. The farmer cannot get money from the SBI. Where will the farmer get from the World Bank because you liberated the economy? So we haven't done measures to allow easy access for the farmer. The farmer still has to sell to a middleman. If you ask me now I can go to another market as a middleman and buy from the farmer is a great advantage that has happened, not exactly for the farmer. We need to see that as far as the farmer was concerned, instead of making him an entrepreneur, we had created the farmer to be dependent on minimum support price as his only market. So he grew whatever crop the government would buy back. And therefore, we ensured through these minimum support prices that the country, farmers instead of growing 10,000 varieties of crops, ended up growing 10. So you have sugarcane, you have wheat, you have paddy, you have few oil seeds. That's it. And the only debate is talking to politicians, will you please ensure this is still in the minimum support price basket? And will you please increase it by 50 paise? So by eliminating APMC, farmer is only concerned, will it affect the MSP? And the entire misinformation going around in the country is, will MSP be affected or not?
Great point. Let's talk about Araku Coffee. You've managed to create a niche gourmet coffee, a coffee which in a sense is made by the Adivasi local farmer tribe, has become a award-winning coffee in the global map. Do you think several of these food innovations can be done? And even if it is done, will they really move the needle? Because Araku Coffee is niche of a niche experiment. It's a successful experiment, but looking at the total delta it will bring to the country and to our GDP is going to be minuscule.
So again, very valid questions. I want to, with humility, acknowledge the fact that we're very proud that 100,000 Adivasis are probably out of poverty because they embraced globalization. And they went on to produce, they embraced globalization in its ethos, which is try and see if they are supported with the right incentive to compete with the best in the world, to see if they can. So we as a non-profit, Naandi Foundation, facilitated sort of that kind of ecosystem for the Adivasis. So what did we do? We gave them knowledge free, we gave them the inputs free, we got them the right sapling, we got free trees around them to plant so that the ecosystem became very biodiverse and conducive for it. And they put in their labor day in and day out with dedication. And then we got global coffee experts to come and teach them how to grow coffee better. Please understand, India was world famous for its tea, never for its coffee. Across the world, you never got world-class coffee to buy, which was Indian. They were always, Ethiopian, Rwandan, never an Indian coffee. So it was an uphill task to get there. Once the ecosystem was given, these tribal farmers have shown to every youngster, to every budding entrepreneur, to every farmer, every tiller, that you can create the world's best. I agree, you just need to have the conditions that help you to compete. Without the level playing field, we cannot do it. It's quite similar to the situation of gender and glass ceiling. You have to create those conditions for them to compete, otherwise they can't. So same way with small farmers. We did that in Araku and it happened. Did it impact India's GDP? No. Did it impact India's brand? Yes. I can wager that it is one of the best entrepreneurial brand story that India will have and India will count when we write our history post-independence. For another 200 years, I can assure you Araku Coffee will be one story because it gave India a place in the world map of coffee. You go to the best coffee buyers in the planet, from Kyoto to Switzerland to New York to Norway, every dotted place where coffee matters, they will today talk to you about Araku Coffee. And we get them to come and buy every year. So as a brand positioning, we did extraordinary for India. We showed truly we are incredible India. GDP, no. But did it change the economic status and the ecology of India and the tribals in Araku? Answer is yes. So this begs the question, can this be replicated? We're not talking about coffee. We can do this for 1,000 commodities across India. The trick is to move from commodities up the value chain, to process it. I didn't sell coffee as cherry, which is how rest of coffee is sold. I didn't sell it as clean beans. I converted it right from harvesting to processing, in some cases roasting, retailing, etc., and packaging. So we can do the same with pine. I looked into products as varied as, for example, the entire spices. Mark my words, in 3 years, Araku will be known for pepper oil and pepper. We are dealing with inquiries in the Nordic region. So, I'm sorry to say something probably Kerala missed. I'm inspired when I go to Costco and Whole Foods in US. The pepper there is sold as Tellicherry pepper. To my chagrin, I found out that the entrepreneur is not in Kerala, not from Tellicherry. It's somebody else who is a middleman who put the name Tellicherry and is selling it. So you have missed opportunity stories all around India in agriculture. All we need is create these clusters like Araku. We can do with turmeric. It's suddenly in the vogue. Not just latte, but it's also about all kinds of nutraceuticals that you need to use, which is wanting to use turmeric. Pineapple in the Northeast is a completely wasted opportunity. We could have converted processing units, dried pineapples. We don't have fruit preserves from India. So whether it is drumstick powder, which the Germans are asking me to prepare and export for them, to every single superfood that is going to be discussed post-COVID, the origin of it will be India. I had an inquiry from US, asking for pongamia seed. And I asked them, why do you need pongamia? Because that's a weed in Araku, by the way. They said they'll pay me the moon if I can give them like staggering 2,000 tons. I said, for what? They said they'll extract vitamin C from pongamia. Because oranges are scarce suddenly. Florida's oranges are dead because of monocropping and pest. What a surprise. So we really need to look at how we exploit it proactively before markets come and ask it itself. And that's the hub we need to create. We need to create, our coffee is built on what's called the terroir concept. Terroir is nothing but the triumvirate of farmer, the soil, and the climate coming together and forming a certain ecosystem and a certain formula which lends a certain flavor and a certain character to the crop it produces. That's how the Bordeaux wines, the Bourgognes, Burgundy wines are so renowned. It took them like hundreds of years to classify each plot of land. We did that in few years in Araku. Every parcel of land has a terroir of its own, and we grouped and created our coffee based on terroir. So when you drink an Araku coffee, and if I tell you it is microclimate or a grand reserve, it means it is coming from a set of villages which have similar climatic conditions, including how is the sunrise falling on them, what's the dew, what's the moisture level, what's the acidity of the soil, what type of agriculture the farmer follows before it becomes a package by itself. We can do this terroir. India is full of 1 million terroirs. When people talk to me about diversity of India, it's not language and culture and the fact that we all have different customs. The deep-rooted one is about the terroir of soil, what nature bestowed on us. And we all built on that diversity our own languages and our own food habits. We have not converted into an enterprise idea. That's the one which is, to me, to my mind, a sitting duck. And that's what we need to exploit. If we do that, it goes back to your question, can that food and agriculture revolution, will it just be sitting there without ever getting exploited? Answer is, it's very likely.
Well, Mr. Kumar, really appreciate your time and my compliments on the way you've really managed to really indicate, share, and take the brand India higher, whether it is Araku Coffee or the way you are trying to re-engineer the entire food chain. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and wish you all the best for all the good work you are doing at the Naandi Foundation and again at an individual level as well.
Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to ET now. Thank you.